January 6th, 1945. 03:15 hours. Northern Alsace. The snow has stopped falling, but the cold has sharpened. The temperature sits well below freezing, the kind of cold that hardens steel and turns oil thick as syrup. In the darkness, German tank engines idle low, their exhausts fogging the forest roads with pale white clouds that hang motionless in the still air. On a ridge overlooking the valley, General Johannes Blaskowitz studies a map under a dim red lamp. The map is immaculate. Clean lines, carefully measured distances, roads traced in thin black ink. On paper, the offensive still works. Operation Nordwind, Germany's final major counteroffensive in the west, is already underway. To the north, Patton's Third Army is driving hard, hammering the southern edge of the Ardennes Bulge. Allied commanders believe the German army has exhausted itself. They believe the Reich has spent its last reserves. Blaskowitz knows this assumption is wrong. In front of him, assembled in the forests of Alsace, is a force that should no longer exist in January 1945. Elements of the 21st Panzer Division, SS mountain troops hardened by years of fighting in Yugoslavia and Russia, Panther tanks fresh from German factories, late-model machines with improved armor and optics delivered straight from railheads under cover of darkness. This is not desperation. This is concentration. The Americans defending this sector, the U.S. 7th Army, are thin, critically thin. Entire infantry companies stretched across 3 and even 4 miles of frontage. No depth, no heavy armor. The Americans have stripped this region bare to reinforce the fighting in the Ardennes. On the map, Blaskowitz can see it clearly. A weakened flank, an exposed seam, a chance to shatter an army. The objective is simple and absolute. Break through, roll west, recapture Strasbourg, and prove that the German army is not finished. The numbers support the plan. German doctrine is built around Schwerpunkt, concentration of force, armor massed at a single decisive point, speed, shock, momentum. Once the American line collapses, there will be no time for recovery. On paper, this is not madness. On paper, this is precision. But Blaskowitz is not celebrating. He has been a soldier for too long. He pushes the map aside and walks to the narrow window of his command post. Outside, the Vosges Mountains stretch into the darkness, layer after layer of forested ridges, steep gradients, ravines cut deep by centuries of erosion. The roads vanish into the trees. They are not highways. They are not military supply routes. They are medieval paths, built for timber wagons, carts, and animals. Blaskowitz understands something Berlin does not. This offensive will not be decided by tanks or courage or ideology. It will be decided by width. He pushes the map aside and measures the road markings again. He does the math in his head, not the first time. The average road width in this sector, 3.5 meters. The width of a Panther tank, just over 3.4 meters, track to track. There is no margin. No shoulder, no bypass, no room to maneuver around a disabled vehicle. A single stalled tank will block the entire column. And an armored column that cannot move is not an armored spearhead. It is a traffic jam. Blaskowitz knows the Panther well. On open ground, it is a predator. Its 75mm KWK-42 gun can destroy any Allied tank at ranges beyond return fire. Its frontal armor is nearly immune to American anti-tank weapons. But the Panther weighs 45 tons. It was designed for space, for distance, for speed.
It was not designed for mountain roads covered in ice. He writes his warning carefully, professionally, without emotion. The terrain will neutralize our technical superiority. The road network cannot support concentrated armored movement. I strongly recommend cancellation or modification of the operation. The message is sent to OKW, the German High Command. The reply arrives hours later. It is brief. The Führer has decided. The attack will proceed. Failure is not an option. Blaskowitz folds the message and places it in his pocket. He does not argue again. At 2300 hours, German artillery opens fire across the entire sector. The night erupts with muzzle flashes, the low thunder of guns rolling through the valleys like distant storms. Operation Nordwind has begun. For the first 24 hours, it appears that Berlin was right. American outposts fall back. Thin lines buckle under concentrated pressure. German infantry advances through the forests with practiced efficiency. Reports arrive of breakthroughs, of collapsing resistance. The maps begin to change. Arrows move west. But beneath the surface, something else is happening. Something invisible. In the mountain passes south of the salient, the first Panther tank reaches a narrow curve in the road. Ice glistens beneath its tracks. The driver eases off the throttle, adjusting his steering by centimeters. There is no room for error. Behind him, another tank waits, then another, then another. Engines idle, fuel burns, and the road, measured centuries ago, waits patiently.
January 7th, 1945, 06:10 hours. Dawn comes slowly to the Vosges. The forest emerges in shades of gray, branches sagging under the weight of ice. In the half-light, German armored columns inch forward along roads that twist and climb like veins carved into the mountainside. From above, the movement looks orderly. From inside the column, it is suffocating. The Panther crews sit sealed inside their steel hulls, breath fogging the periscopes, engines idling at low RPM to conserve fuel and keep the oil warm. The tanks move not in formation, but in single file, nose to tail, each vehicle separated by only a few meters of road. There is no space to fan out, no space to deploy, no space to fight. This is not armored warfare. It is logistics under pressure. At 0623, the lead tank of one column reaches a hairpin turn cut directly into the rock face. The driver slows, nudging the left track toward the inside wall, steering with millimeter precision. The road slopes downward. Black ice coats the surface, invisible and lethal. The Panther's weight shifts. For half a second, nothing happens. Then the rear track slips. The tank slews sideways, its hull grinding against the stone embankment. The driver overcorrects. The massive vehicle jackknifes across the road and stops, diagonal, immovable, blocking the pass completely. The engine stalls. Behind it, the column freezes. The second tank breaks, the third, the fourth. 10 tanks, 20, 30. A Panzer division does not stop like a car. There is no pulling to the side. There is no turning around. The road is a trench carved into rock and forest. To the left, a steep drop into trees. To the right, a wall of stone. Recovery crews move forward on foot, slipping on the ice, carrying cables and tools. They attach tow lines, trying to winch the Panther back into alignment. It does not move. A 45-ton tank does not forgive mistakes. While the crews work, engines remain running. They must. In this cold, shutting down risks frozen fuel lines and seized components. Each idling engine consumes precious gasoline, fuel that cannot be replaced easily. This delay lasts 40 minutes.
then an hour, then 2. By mid-morning, the road behind the disabled tank stretched back nearly 10 kilometers, a line of armored vehicles trapped by a single point of failure. This is the first geometry lesson. Blaskowitz receives the report shortly after 9:00. He reads it silently, then marks the position on his map with a small pencil cross. He does not react. He already knows what this means. Elsewhere, similar reports begin to arrive. A Panther stuck in a village street, its gun barrel scraping against stone walls too narrow for the turret to traverse. A half-track sliding into a ditch, blocking the only supply route forward. A bridge rated for farm traffic, collapsing under armored weight. None of these incidents involve the enemy. There are no American guns firing, no ambushes, no counterattacks. The offensive is losing time to space. German doctrine assumes that speed creates safety, that rapid movement prevents the enemy from concentrating fire. But speed requires freedom of movement, and freedom requires room. Here, there is none. By January 8th, the operational math begins to shift. Columns that were expected to advance 20 kilometers per day are now moving 5. 5 becomes 2. 2 becomes a few hundred meters. The armor is no longer arriving as a mass. It is arriving in fragments, stretched thin across mountain roads, unable to concentrate at the decisive point. This is fatal. The Panther tank, designed to dominate open terrain, becomes something else entirely in a column like this. It cannot maneuver. It cannot bring its gun to bear. It cannot exploit range or armor. It becomes a fixed object. A Panther in a mountain column is not a weapon of war. It is a liability that consumes fuel. Blaskowitz sits in his command post as reports accumulate, each one confirming the same pattern. The offensive still exists on paper, the arrows on the map still point west, but the time constant of the operation has changed. Every hour lost in the mountains is an hour the Americans use to recover, redeploy, and bring in artillery. General Alexander Patch, commanding the 7th Army, does not attempt to hold his thin line at all costs. He understands the situation immediately. He orders controlled withdrawals to defensible positions, river lines, villages, and the concrete fortifications of the old Maginot Line. He is not retreating in panic. He is buying time. The advance continues, but now it is advancing into prepared geometry. The forests thicken, visibility collapses, engagement distances shrink from kilometers to hundreds, then to tens. And in this compressed space, the Panther's greatest advantages, range, optics, frontal armor, begin to evaporate. By the evening of January 8th, the offensive has not failed, but it has slowed enough for the second trap to begin to close. The road network has done its work. The armor is committed. The fuel is burning. The clock is no longer German. Blaskowitz stands again at the window, looking out at the darkened mountains. He understands that the attack has crossed a point of no return. The road was only 3.5 meters wide. That was enough.
January 9th, 1945. The first American artillery shells arrive without ceremony. There is no dramatic barrage at dawn, no rolling thunder, just isolated detonations echoing through the valleys, testing shots, calibration fire. American forward observers, positioned on high ground and in abandoned Maginot bunkers, are adjusting their aim. They are not firing blindly. They know exactly where the roads are. They know exactly where the German armor must move, and they know it has nowhere else to go. The Vosges forests collapse visibility. Snow-laden branches and dense pine growth reduce sightlines to less than 200 meters. In some ravines, visibility drops below 50. At these distances, the Panther's technical superiority disappears.
At 200 meters, armor thickness is irrelevant. At 200 meters, optics do not matter. At 200 meters, the engagement reduces to one brutal equation. Who sees whom first? American infantry understands this immediately. Bazooka teams move into the trees, positioning themselves along predictable choke points, road bends, village entrances, narrow bridges where armor must slow or stop. German infantry, advancing ahead of the tanks, begins to report contact. Sharp, close-range firefights, short bursts, quick withdrawals. The Americans are not trying to hold ground. They are shaping it. At the village of Wingen-sur-Moder, SS mountain troops infiltrate under cover of darkness and seize forward positions. For a moment, it looks like a breakthrough. German commanders order armor forward to stabilize the gain. The lead Panther enters the village street. The road narrows between medieval stone buildings. The tank's long gun barrel scrapes against walls as the driver fights to keep the vehicle centered. Ice makes steering sluggish. The turret, powered by the engine, rotates slowly, its movement restricted by the tight confines. The crew cannot see. Around a corner, an American bazooka team waits. They are close, less than 40 meters. The shot hits the rear hull. The shaped charge punches through the thinner armor and ignites the fuel. The Panther erupts into flame, blocking the street completely. The radio crackles calmly. Panther down, road blocked. A second tank attempts to bypass through an alley. It becomes wedged between stone walls, its track spinning uselessly. Another bazooka round. Another fire. The village becomes a tomb. This pattern repeats across northern Alsace. Villages that existed long before tanks now dismantle them. Streets too narrow, corners too tight, angles wrong. The Panther, built for open battlefields, is geometrically incompatible with medieval Europe. Blaskowitz receives the loss reports steadily, not from tank duels, not from American armor, from buildings, from trees, from roads measured centuries earlier. While the tanks die in villages, the valleys begin to fill with something worse: artillery. The U.S. 7th Army possesses one advantage Germany cannot match: volume. Each American infantry division brings dozens of field howitzers. Behind them, Corps and Army artillery adds heavy guns capable of reaching any valley the Germans can enter. And, unlike the Germans, the Americans do not count shells. They have the VT proximity fuse, a shell that detonates above the target, showering fragments downward. German soldiers have no defense against it. Foxholes offer no protection from explosions in the air. In the valleys near Ritterschafing and Hatten, German infantry concentrates for a breakthrough. This is correct doctrine. Concentration of force, one final push. American observers call in fire. The response is immediate. 155-millimeter shells crash into the confined terrain. Rock faces amplify the blasts. Trees explode into splinters that act as secondary shrapnel. Ravines become pressure traps, turning cover into killing zones. The Germans are not fighting a battle. They are being processed. Blaskowitz watches the situation deteriorate in real time. His armor cannot maneuver. His infantry cannot advance without artillery annihilation. Every attempt to concentrate forces creates a perfect target. The second trap has closed. The road confined the tanks. The forest erased their advantages. The artillery finishes the equation. And still, the offensive continues. Because now, there is no way to stop it without admitting what has already happened. By January 11th, 1945, the German advance has lost all momentum. The arrows on the map no longer move, they vibrate. Reports from the front begin to change in tone. Where earlier messages spoke of progress and resistance, the language now shifts to mechanical concerns. Low fuel, delayed resupply, engines shut down to conserve, awaiting gasoline. Blaskowitz understands immediately. Operation Nordwind was launched with fuel reserves calculated for one outcome only: a breakthrough. The assumption was simple. German armor would smash through the American line, push west, and seize Allied fuel depots intact. The offensive was not supplied to fight a prolonged battle. It was supplied to win quickly. This is how German operational planning now works: short, violent thrusts fueled by captured resources. The Reich no longer has the industrial depth to sustain anything else. On a paved road, under ideal conditions, a Panther consumes roughly 2.8 liters of fuel per kilometer. In the Vosges, climbing steep grades, navigating ice, constantly stopping and starting, that consumption spikes to over 7 liters per kilometer. But movement is no longer the main drain. Idling is. In traffic jams that stretch for hours, Panther engines burn fuel simply to stay alive in the cold. 5 liters per hour to maintain temperature. More when turrets are rotated. More when radios are powered. More when crews attempt repeated recovery efforts. Every minute the tank does not move is still a minute it consumes fuel. By January 12th, German quartermasters begin reporting the unthinkable. Fuel convoys cannot reach the front. American fighter bombers, P-47 Thunderbolts, roam the skies whenever the clouds lift, strafing roads and destroying soft-skinned supply vehicles. Each destroyed truck represents dozens of tanks that will never move again. The fuel curve crosses a critical threshold. Tanks begin shutting down in the forests. At first, it is temporary. Engines off to conserve fuel until orders arrive. Crews wait, bundled in greatcoats, listening to distant artillery. Then the waits grow longer and longer. By January 15th, entire companies of Panthers sit motionless beneath the trees. Their guns are loaded, their radios still work, their crews are intact, but the engines will not start. The fuel gauges are empty. A Panther without fuel is not a tank. It is a steel bunker. American units quickly realize what is happening. Recon patrols report silent armor. Aerial observation confirms it. German tanks clustered in forests, unmoving, exposed. The response is methodical. Artillery pounds the immobilized machines. Infantry bypasses them entirely, leaving them to be reduced later. Some crews abandon their vehicles under cover of darkness, sabotaging what they can before retreating on foot. Others wait. Waiting becomes surrender. Blaskowitz watches the fuel reports arrive, each one confirming what he already knows. The offensive has not been defeated by American maneuver or superior armor. It has been defeated by consumption curves. The tanks reached the mountains. The mountains slowed them. The delays burned the fuel. And once the fuel was gone, nothing else mattered. On January 25, 1945, the order is issued to halt Operation Nordwind. The cost is staggering. Tens of thousands of casualties, the destruction of Germany's last mobile reserves in the West, Panzer divisions that will never be reconstituted. The final irony is brutal. The Panthers did not die fighting enemy tanks. They died waiting on roads that were 3.5 meters wide. Blaskowitz receives the halt order without comment. He folds it, places it on the table, and looks once more at the map. He had seen this outcome from the beginning. He had warned them. The road answered instead.